we're going to start with chapter 5, Modern Technology in Communication. So, this subject is about being aware about your work environment in terms of the technical aspects of your work environment, in a sense that having knowledge about computer systems, different types of communication devices, and how a basic work environment is set up for communicating with each other. Right? So some terminologies and some concepts are only covered under this topic, and there are also some areas where certain terminologies that are needed when you are working in a, especially in a business communication oriented environment. Uh, the, the the knowledge about certain um, like documents and things like that. So let's begin our discussion. Most probably, I'll be doing this in 2 sessions. So today we'll try to cover as much as possible uh, under this topic. Okay, so the objectives is that you should be able to use the computer or any other computer system for effective communication, including what is a WAN, what is a LAN, what is a MAN. So the term is clear, and how to use the telephone and the fax and how they work, and practical use of the internet and the email facility and other devices that you can find in the office and their advantages, disadvantages, etc. Okay, quickly going through. In the last decade of the 20th century and the first decade of this century, unprecedented expansion in the field of communication and IT has changed the world to a very great extent. It has surpassed some of the expectations of the global village concept. So early days, ICT was introduced as a thought process of connecting connecting people from different areas in the world um, as one particular village. So, so global village was a concept that was introduced. That was how IT was introduced earlier. But today, rather than saying it as one global village, it has gone beyond that concept, and how different technologies are available today uh, that almost does more than what you can think of a village or a global village. Okay, computer miniaturization. So miniaturization we'll be discussing in the third para. So the computer is now a household term known to almost all students at tertiary level. Many know how to use it and also how the various functions of it. So today, if you are using a mobile phone, that is also a computer in a sense. So therefore, it's not intended here to provide what is computer and how to use it and all. Basically, you have a basic idea of what computing devices are doing. In terms of storage capacity and the speed of the computer, it is decided by the size of the CPU. You know what is a CPU, right? CPU is called Central Processing Unit, which is it is a component in the computer system that is responsible for processing information. So when you send data into the computer, CPU is the area that takes care of, you know, doing the calculations, manipulations, and then producing the output. So in a computer, CPU is also called the microprocessor. Mostly, if you look at a microprocessor in a computer, simple Google. It's a small chip you will see in the computer keyboard, sorry, the motherboard, something like this. So this area, the whole thing you see in a computer is called a motherboard. Even in a mobile phone, you have that, and you'll have a small area where there is a small chip like this you will find. This is called the microprocessor. So this is responsible for all your data processing. So they are now small that these can now be attached to a camera or even a mobile phone, whatever the device you think it is available. So what is miniaturization? Miniaturization may be sometimes a new term for most of you. It means making smaller in size but maintaining the same functions and actions. Now, if you look at the following sentence, what they're explaining is, now, early days when you're going to do a processing in a computer, you had a large, computer which is taking the space of a entire room, right? So they're saying here. So from this person who has written this particular document is mentioned. I remember reading a newspaper item about 40 years ago when computers were installed at the Department of Examinations to speed up the issuing of results quickly. It said that the computer used for that was the size of a room. We sometimes call it as mainframes. Let me note down the term for you also. Might be helpful. So it was called mainframe or mainframe computers. So normally they were large in size, and then it became to the size of a cupboard, and then it became to the size of where you can put it onto a table, and today in your uh, hands, and now even smaller devices are there which you can just fit it to your skins, right? So that much computer has become much smaller and smaller. But in terms of processing and speed, sometimes you can be able to do what the big computer did in a small computer as well, or much more faster as well. So miniaturization is this. This is the meaning, right? Doing small things with much more better performance. That's how you can understand that. Okay. Today you will see a different type of computer. There are still computers that take entire rooms, but they are not called mainframes. They are sometimes called data centers. So if you search on Google and see later, you will see that data centers are also taking entire, warehouses and all. But the difference between mainframes and data centers are much more fast supercomputers, like weather processing or like satellite image processing, real-time processing systems are all maintaining this. Most of your Google servers, when you're searching a keyword, you're able to get results very quickly. So those are all processed by different data centers. Right? They are very powerful computers and again very large in size. Okay, so for us, we can just focus on the PC or the laptops we are using today. So, but as you know, now the computer is the size of a small box. It is an equipment that can be placed on a table along with the monitor, the printer, the keyboard, UPS. Anybody knows what is a UPS? So, UPS stands for uninterrupted power supply. Basically, uh, in a workplace, you will see uh, there is a the CPU. Sometimes the CPU is also referred now. When we talk in real technical terms, CPU is that small unit I showed you. But generally, looking at an external computer system, uh, the monitor is there, the keyboard is there. Then you have a box where you switch on the machine. That is normally called the CPU. And then next to that, you will see another smaller device, which is called the UPS, uh, uninterrupted power supply. So it will look like something like this, which you place it next to a CPU and a monitor. So this is like a battery. So you will have a plug like this at the bottom. You can plug in your computer, your monitor, maybe on your phone charge, everything. So whenever the main current is not available, this will power your machine continuously. So it will look like this way. So different sizes are there. Normally it is carryable like 5 to 8 kilos in weight. So it's basically a battery. So you have to be aware of those devices. Though it says that this is the personal computer and the workstation computers fixed in offices are more powerful and bigger, yet there isn't much of difference between the two. Many PCs can be used in an office. Okay, so what they're saying, sometimes you will use these words interchangeably, personal computer and workstation. Generally, workstation is a term used for a computer that can be used for multiple purposes, not just serving a particular user, but it can serve multiple users, maybe connect multiple computers to a single computer. So that single computer will be known as a workstation. But again, personal computer means again that is also a computer, but only for one person who can use it. So interchangeably, these terms can be used in your office environment, right? Then you have laptops. So now you'll find the laptops which are further development in miniaturization. A laptop is even smaller than a briefcase. You have even different versions now called notebooks and all, just like a diary you can carry it out. So you can carry it in a bus, train, or you can operate it, keep it in on your lap. Okay, quick question. Compare and contrast the features and functions of a desktop and a laptop computer. Quickly, anybody can give you. What are the differences in a desktop and laptop, goods and bads? So think of a desktop computer, think of a laptop computer. So what are the things you see uh, as a feature or function good in a desktop or good in a laptop, which is not in the other one? So laptop we can take it everywhere. Yes, desktop you can't take it everywhere. So that feature is called mobility. So laptops are generally mobile, and desktops you have to station it in one place. Okay. Any other thing you can compare or contrast? So talking about the size, which is which is smaller or which is bigger? Generally comparing a laptop to a desktop. Okay. Yes, laptops are smaller than desktop. So that's a second point. And in terms of uh, price, which is expensive? Which one do you think is expensive? So these are common questions, like in any environment you'll be asked about, or you have to have some basic understanding. Desktop is more expensive than desktop. Okay, I think there's a typo. Okay. Okay, it should be the other way around. I think laptop is more expensive than a desktop, because today you can buy a desktop with the same speed and processing power, or the requirements like the hard disk storage capacity, just like a laptop, uh, for a lower price. Now, just to give you an idea, so today, let's say you want to buy a 2.4 gigahertz processor, 1 terabyte hard disk in an environment. Let's assume the price of a desktop with the monitor and things like that. If you're going to buy, it might be costing you around 50 to 60,000, or maybe maximum 70,000. The exact same thing, if you're going to buy a laptop, it's going to cost you double the amount. Double the amount, keep in mind. So it's like 150,000 or more than that. right? So generally laptops are expensive. The reason being is pointing back to the first point you mentioned, because laptop you have the convenience of taking it anywhere. That portability. For that portability alone, there is a uh, huge cost for that feature, for that flexibility, right? So laptops are expensive. One more other point I could add in terms of comparing these two is that in a laptop you have all the devices integrated, but in desktop, you know, you have the devices separately. Okay, and because of that, sometimes desktop might be an advantageous thing to use, because like when you have a part of a device not working, you can replace only that part. I mean, you have to spend only money. Let's say a keyboard is not working, you just have to go for the keyboard replacement. But if it's a laptop, sometimes you have to replace the whole thing, although they do the repair for the individual components, but there is a risk. So like that, you can compare and contrast more features on desktop and laptop. So that will be helpful for you in certain discussions or articles if you are coming across. Then mobile phones. A good example of miniaturization is the mobile phone, as I discussed earlier. A few years back, the mobile phone was the size of a brick. Like people used to say early days when Celtel was there in Sri Lanka. I don't know whether you were available. So Celtel is the first name of the company of Tigo, Etisalat, and all. Their first name was Celtel. Uh, they had this phone called Tango, and it looks like Kadol Bagay. They say it's very very big, right? But today, you can see mobile phones have become much smaller and more convenient, so that you can carry it in your shirt pocket or anywhere you want, even in a purse or something. So very convenient today. So miniaturization has happened on those devices. Okay, another quick question. Functions of a mobile phone. So basically you should be able to answer if somebody asks what you can do in a mobile phone. You can send SMS, you can take calls, you can have calendars, you can have reminders, uh, you can do various options. Especially uh, you have to know the difference between a mobile phone and a smartphone. So smartphone is a place where you can involve in um, involved with multiple internet connectivity and more interaction. That is what is a smartphone, and smartphone normally has a touch screen, unlike a mobile phone. So these differences you should be aware of. Right. Talking about WAN and LAN. Um, so before I go into discussion, anybody knows what is a WAN, what is a LAN, what is a MAN? Do you have any idea? This is cool. WAN is wide area. LAN should be, yes, correct. There is another one called MAN, Metropolitan Area Network. So quickly refreshing. So I assume you have already have some knowledge on this. So starting from the smallest one, LAN, Local Area Network, is a network that you create in a small room or a small work area. It may be in a room or between rooms of a building. Okay. Then you go to Metropolitan Area Network, which is uh, a network that you create within a city. Let's say between two buildings in a same geographical area, right? That is called WAN. Sorry, MAN. So another example of MAN would be, this cable TV connections and all. Now people use cable TV in different cities. So the broadcast or telecast happens to one center, and that center distributes the waves to all of the subscribers. So that's how these cable networks work. That is coming under the MAN, Metropolitan Area Network. WAN is the wider thing. It's mostly related to the internet and where you connect people from multiple locations or distant locations. So that is coming under WAN. Okay. Uh, So we already discussed how computers play a very important role in the business communication. An unprecedented development in IT took place with the merging of the telephone and the computer. So once these two devices converged together, we started using the terminology called data communication, right? Whereas data comes from the computer side and the communication comes from the telephone side. So joint terminology. The initial development in this field took place with networking. By this, a number of computers are linked together to make a network. So let's discuss the advantages of this technology of networking. Firstly, there is a possibility of dividing the resources among the computers that are linked by a network. So when you have something called a network, obviously the expectation is to share resources. So when people are connected, just forget about the computers. When you say networking among people, uh, when you go to a family, mostly you do a networking. So what do you do by networking? Basically, you share thoughts, you share ideas, you receive ideas, you discuss all these things you do. So this is the same thing that happens when you do in a computer. So setting up this networking differs in the arrangement of how we make these networks. So that is what is called topologies. So we'll come to that point. So let's revisit this. Firstly, there is a possibility of dividing the resources among the computers that are linked by a network. If you take an example, we can think of the printer. 4 or 5 computers can be served by one printer when the computers are networked. So visit an office where computers are used, find out whether they are networked. If so, draw a plan of the networking pattern. Indicate the place where the printer is, if that is too late. It is a small activity. So why they have given that question is like, now, as a business person or a person coming from a non-IT field, you should have a basic understanding about how the devices in a workplace are connected. So, because some people often, we also face this question sometimes in the office. People have no idea, no basic idea how things work, because sometimes they expect to go to a. People normally have this notion that if a printer is there, we have to go to the computer that is directly connected to that printer. That's not the case. Now you can, if you have proper LAN setup, you can take your printouts from your own machine itself. Only thing you have to know is how to connect to the printer. So how to connect to the printer? First, we have to know that that printer has to be connected to a machine where you can see the printers, right? So that idea is important. Secondly, a networked computer system facilitates easy exchange of information. This facilitates intercommunication. Computer networks can be used to exchange messages between computers. Okay. Quick question. Your computer and your boss's computer are linked by a network. So can you communicate with your boss without using the telephone? So this is just a general idea based on your real experience. They ask you. In case if you are able to communicate with your boss without using the telephone, that means your work environment has a networked environment. Basically, you have a networked uh, set of devices where you are able to avoid physical contact with people, right? Uh, you have drafted a circular to be sent to the staff. Can your boss approve it without reading a hard copy? Think of that scenario. Like for example, you have written something, or you have typed something in your computer, and if you have a system in process, when I say system, it could be manual, it could be computerized. But imagine the situation, the draft you have written, if your boss can approve it without reading a hard copy. In that case, you already have a computerized system, because like people can use a workflow system through an intranet, and you can send the document through that, where he can download it and approve it, or maybe you can send it through a email, right? A quick email would help. Okay, just now I noticed it's not LAN area network, it's called local area network. Okay, so basically, uh, if you are able to send a document without without sending a hard copy, you have a network scenario. Thirdly, network computers can link a number of officers who are doing the same task and help the officers to complete the program together. Yes. So through a network through a networked environment, you can enable collaboration. This is called collaboration. So you have one task, but the task is shared by multiple people, and multiple people work on the task together. Today, you can achieve that even through online systems like Google Docs. For example, you can open up a Google worksheet, even Microsoft Online. If you have a Microsoft account, you can go to the Excel, or in Google, if you go to Google Worksheet, you can have multiple people editing the document, and you will see the people who are editing if they are connected at the same time, right? And you can have a chat and things like that uh, on a Google Worksheet. So let me quickly show you one thing. So this is my Google Drive under my Gmail account. Now, for example, if I uh, open up this document, now at the moment I'm the only person editing this online Excel sheet, or we call it Google Sheet. Now if I share this with multiple people, already I have shared this with a couple of people. Now if I enter other people who are able to edit this, and if they are connected at the moment, I will be able to see their things. For example, if they are typing something on this cell, I will see their names appearing here that they are editing something. So this is how multiple people will be able to uh, use a particular document. You can create a draft or anything that you're preparing for the company. You can do it in a shared manner. So network computers have some disadvantages as well. A common disadvantage is that a virus that attacks the computer may destroy the software and hardware. So this is mostly this happens if you don't follow proper security protocols, and if your computers don't have antivirus software installed. So the virus from one location might be able to attack the other one. But these things can be avoided if you have proper security mechanisms implemented through the help of your IT department. So the advantages of networking far outdo its disadvantages. As a result, the networking will be a process that will continue progressing in the future. So basically what they're saying is, um, so networking, why we do networking is to improve our work, to, do things very quickly, to achieve results very quickly in a swift manner, and to be able to collaborate with different people, even if you don't have the ability to connect or interact with them directly. So things will keep on moving if you have a networking capacity. Right. So the methods of networking. The uses available through networks depend on the network system. The technological significance can change on how information can be exchanged between two computers. In certain networks, there is the possibility of direct exchange of information between them, but in some other cases, it may be necessary to go through a main computer to exchange information. So what they're saying is, the way you arrange your networks can differ depending on what type of work you're doing. For example, there can be a situation where uh, your, let's say in a office, you have a person working, or two persons working next to each of your side, left side and right side, or maybe in front of you. You might be able to quickly share a document by directly connecting to their computer and sharing, or maybe that may not be possible without going through a common server. There might be a common computer where you have to copy your files to that, and people will have to download from that. So those things are arranged through how computers are arranged. So we have certain network types, or we call them network topologies. I'll quickly show you image of that. So here are some network topologies. So starting with a very simple one is called the bus topology here. So you can see why we call it bus is you have a central line which is called the network bus. So any computers can go and connect to that bus. Simply adding a new computer to that network is very easy. You just simply connect to that. Then you have another arrangement called ring topology where you can see uh, a computer is connected to either side of its connection. For example, like you will have maximum 2 connections from a computer to either side. So each will be connected in this arrangement. Then you have star topology, which is the most popular topology found in offices, where you have a central computer where all the internet and things come through that, and all the other computers will have to connect to that computer in order to use the internet or to share files and things like that. Then you have mesh topology, where each computer is connected to each other computer in that network. So mostly this is very rare, rarely found in small networks. Mostly if you go for WAN or MAN, this might be there. But implementing this mesh topology in a small office is very expensive because you'll have a lot of wires, obviously. Then you have tree topology, this arrangement, this kind of arrangement, or you have a mix of all together, which is called hybrid topology. So you'll have a section of computers in one, another section of computers in another topology, where you can connect those two together. So this may be between different floors of a building or different departments. One department may follow one topology depending on their needs. So these are called network topologies and or sometimes called network types. So quickly learning them, I think they have given the notes only for star and bus. The other two they haven't given. Anyway, star network, according to this networking, the host computer or the main computer is placed in a central position as this one here, with the other computers forming a star arrangement. No information can bypass the host computer. It will require to go through the host computer to the other computer. So you have to have the understanding. Mostly most offices will be following this. So in terms of a commercial environment or a business environment, mostly you will have the need of taking printouts. So the printer will be connected to that central computer, and all other computers can take printouts only if the central computer is switched on. So you will have the printer connected to this. If this is switched on only, you can take printout. Otherwise, it's not possible. So we have to have that understanding. Right. Bus network. According to this arrangement, each computer in the network can function independently. They are not controlled by a host computer. As is in the star network, each computer is a host computer. Information flows to it on a common bus line. Additional computer or any other devices, for example, printer, can be easily attached to it. So this is this arrangement you saw. In this one, unlike a star topology, you don't have to rely on a single computer to uh, take a printout or use a fax machine. The fax machine or the printer will be directly connected to this bus, and any computer can directly communicate with the printer or the fax machine, right? So that's the advantage of this type of topology. And each computer will be directly connected to the internet. So that's how this works. Ring, hierarchical, those things I have already giving you an idea how things work here. So ring is this. Hierarchical is another term for tree topology. Right. So now we are going to discuss about the role of copier, telephones, and fax machine. Photocopier. This is the most common device you will see in an office. In the first place, photocopiers facilitates the field of business correspondence in a very great way. Now the business letter writer need not produce carbon copies to send copies of the same document to various people or institutions. Early days you have to use that carbon paper and uh, that has to be written over and over again if you want to send copies. Today, photocopier simplifies that task. Earlier, this was a troublesome and a messy job. Some copies are not very clear or sometimes looked very dirty when you do it in a carbon copies. But now the secretary can make any number of copies within a few minutes. It is also possible to send board papers, minutes of meetings, the agenda, and even the annual reports of companies using photocopy. That's one of the first advantage. Secondly, it facilitates students to retain copies of reference articles from texts, magazines, and newspapers, which they would require for future reference. So now you are able to quickly scribble something in a paper and take copies of it for your future reference. That's very convenient. Thirdly, the photocopier can copy plans, diagrams, maps, pictures, just about anything, which you can't do in a carbon copy. This has provided great assistance to architects, to the printers, to the researchers, and many others in the related fields. So printers means we are talking about the presses, press printing, this newspapers and uh, places where they compile books and things like that. So photocopiers have simplified their work also. Fourthly, the photocopier has a link with the fax machine. A handwritten document gets blurred if it is faxed as it is. But when a photocopy of that document is faxed, it can be much more clear, right? It can overcome that disadvantage when you're sending a document over fax. Another advantage is that it also has the facility to increase or reduce the size of documents that require copying. You can conveniently, shrink the paper size if you have something in A4 and you want it into A3 or B5. Uh, Photocopier automatically does that thing. Just you have to, it's a matter of giving the right settings before you take the photocopy. So overall, the advantages. So I would recommend that after this session, if you can take short notes from these areas. Right? This is in page 52. So this question is also based on that. Explain the disadvantages of sending carbon copies with advantages of photocopies. Okay. This is another activity. They're asking you to study the different types of photocopiers. So we'll skip that for the moment. The expanded role of the photocopier is linked to the development of the machine. Now there are latest models which can copy a number of different documents or copy on both sides of the paper without operator assistance. These large photocopiers you see today, you can give the settings. Early days we have to manually change the sides and take photocopies, but today automatically within the photocopier machine itself, it will copy on both sides. So photocopy also comes with certain disadvantages. So photocopied documents do not have the same reliability of the carbon copy. It is possible to make any changes to the original document and take a photocopy. As a result, in business correspondence, the photocopied document need to be followed by the original. So this is the, I would say this is one of the most important point or the disadvantage of using a photocopied document or relying on a photocopied document as the original. Because when you have a carbon copy, that is the final authority, somebody who has done the thing, original thing. But in a photocopied document, it's difficult to say whether this is the original work because there might be certain other corrections done on top of it which you can't differentiate from the original, right? So I hope you understand that difference. So that is one of the things you see in photocopy documents. So whenever you are trying to send a photocopy, mostly in a very sensitive business transaction, you may need to support it with the original document. Maybe things that were written using the pen, the original pen color like blue color or things like that. Also, photocopies are expensive, so the machine requires regular maintenance, the toner, paper. So, and obviously, like if you are going for 5,000, 6,000 copies, only after 6 months you will have to do a regular maintenance. Apart from that, it shouldn't be that much expensive, right? Quick question, why do many institutions prefer to send emails with attachments instead of sending letters with photocopies? Quick thoughts on that? Why people like to use emails in attachments, send emails with attachment instead of sending letters uh, by taking photocopies? Any idea? So again, they're asking, the question is basically asking what is the advantage of using emails? So that's the different way of putting that question. What is the advantage of using email over using a letter that is printed or, sorry, not printed, taken photocopy from a machine and then you do it over the mail? Okay, emails are quicker than sending letters. Quicker, yes, 1 point. Anything else? So think as a manager. Yes, quick is one thing, but more important than that. Yes, I think that should be the first answer from a manager. Low cost. So you don't have to spend money for all the papers and stuff like that, no? Low cost and quick, obviously. Okay, any other answers coming through? Sometimes letters can be lost, but emails can be archived. Yes, obviously. You can always quickly recall emails by simply going to your sent folder or your inbox. And if there is any misunderstanding, emails can be a very effective way of backing up that information. Yes, that's a good point. Telephone. Think of communication equipment that is now found in a normal household. Most houses have a telephone. It is also a must in most business establishments, including retail shops. In some houses, you may find more than one telephone and also a number of mobile or cellular telephones. There may be a fax machine. In some houses where there are computers, there may be also email and internet facilities. Large business organizations have all these facilities in addition to international direct dialing and intercom connections. Some offices have pager systems which assist the head office to keep contact with their field staff at a lower cost. Nowadays, I don't think pagers are used. So pagers are small devices that you are able to, for example, for a customer sales representative who is on the field, for them to quickly send a message, they use a pager. Normally, these pages are, buckled to the belt, or they may be put into a pocket or areas like that. So it's like it'll only have a texting facility just to inform something. But nowadays, I think those pages are now represented with replaced with the phones we use. But all these things are being used in organizations for communication purposes. Okay, quick activity. Make a list of telecommunication systems in an area, including mobile systems, telephone boxes that is using coins, cards. Okay. Collect brochures and propaganda documents of these systems. try to analyze their tariff rates, then compare the pros and cons of stationary phones and mobile phones. I think nowadays people very rarely use telephone box. No, early days that was very popular. You had this SLT telephone boxes all around the country. Where you have to use the coin. I think still it's there in some airports and all. You have to use a card or a coin to communicate. But today now with mobile phones, those things are kind of outdated. In many modern offices, there are auto exchanges that give a recording instruction. It should be instruction you. So recording instructing you to connect your call to the relevant section using your own telephone. So you have to be aware of that also. Sometimes people get confused with these auto exchange receivers. There might be people who are directly attending your call, or there might be a automatic automatic responder. There might be a pre-recorded person who is talking to you. So I have seen most people, there are funny things on the YouTube if you see people getting confused with these autoresponders. And people think that they're talking to the real person. So auto exchanges give you instructions. Now you might have seen in your local mobile providers also, when you are going to the helpline, there will be a lady mostly giving instruction, press 1, press 2, press 3. So these are called auto exchanges. So it doesn't go to the direct line, but it goes to a connection point, which then gives you further instructions. Right. So I think that's the one they have given here, right? So read the following recording. This is mobile solutions. If you want finance, dial 1. If you want sales, dial 2. So on and so forth. So this system is less troublesome and also very quicker. Unless if you have more instructions, more numbers to type, it's going to be a headache for people who are calling. Right. Then you have telehunting. This is another word. For me also it's a new thing, but after reading only I realized what it is. This is also a system found in many modern offices where there are more than one telephone lines. Assume that a company has 6 telephone lines. There will be 6 telephone numbers. You may dial one number, but at that particular time that number may be engaged. But you need not dial another number. The telehunting system will find out a line that is free at the moment and connect you to that line. So automatically that will switch to the available telephone that is available. It may have a different number, but from the original number you dialed, you don't have to redial. Internally, it will redirect to the relevant. This is what is mostly used in the customer sales department, right? Because they have a lot of numbers, but you may be given only a few numbers. If you dial to one, it will automatically redirect to the available telephone at that moment. Okay, so I will stop at this point. We have covered like 5 pages, another 5 pages to be discussed. So I recommend that you go through the same notes again and take some important notes from these sections we learned. That should be fine for the moment.